This is the Dark Zero Horror Network. Psychological Autopsies.
Now, it's my turn.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. Before we even touch today's stack of sources, I have a very important order of business.
Oh, yeah.
We need to give a massive shout out to the listeners of the Dark Zero Horror Network.
Absolutely.
We are so excited to be partnering with the network to bring you this, so a huge welcome to all the horror fans tuning in.
We are thrilled to be here. And hey, if you are enjoying this content, if you like these, deep analytical dives into the spooky side of cinema, please take a second to hit that like button and subscribe to the network. It really helps us keep the lights on and the tapes rolling.
Okay, with that handled, let's get into the time machine. Today, we are traveling back to 1980.
Ooh, good year.
We have disco balls, we have shiny axes, and we have the Scream Queen herself, Jamie Lee Curtis. We are talking about the Canadian slasher film, Prom Night.
It's such a strange film. It sits in a very weird place in horror history.
It does.
I mean, if you just look at the poster, it looks like a standard clone of Halloween.
Mm.
But when you dig into the production notes, the financing, you realize it's this perfect storm of 1980 film trends just colliding head-on.
It really is. Looking through the notes, it feels like three different movies fighting for dominance. It's part Halloween-style horror, part whodunit mystery, and then, I don't know, it's like Saturday Night Fever with a body count. The amount of disco dancing is staggering.
It is a lot.
Yeah.
And I think our mission today is to unpack exactly how this low-budget tax shelter film became such a massive sleeper hit.
Right.
We have to talk about the strange production quirks, including a pretty wild lawsuit over that soundtrack, and figure out why, despite being called boring by some, it's still a cult classic.
So let's start at the beginning. The origin story is kind of funny because it wasn't supposed to be about a prom at all, was it? The director, Paul Lynch, had a totally different idea.
He did. He was originally pitching a script called Don't Go See the Doctor.
Okay.
It was going to be about a physician murdering his patients.
Which, honestly, is a terrifying concept. I'd watch that.
Great concept. But in the late 70s, it just didn't have the marketing hook investors wanted. And that's where Irwin Yablans comes in.
The producer of Halloween.
The producer of Halloween, which had just exploded in 1978. He basically sat Lynch down and gave him the formula. He said, look, if you want to hit, stop trying to be clever, pick a holiday or an event, and build a horror movie around it.
The Halloween formula seems so obvious now, but back then, that was a revolutionary marketing strategy.
Exactly. So they landed on Prom Night. They took a story by a USC film student, Robert Guzza Jr., which is about teenagers haunted by a childhood tragedy, and they adapted that.
But a good title isn't enough, right? You need a name.
You need a name. And this is where the Halloween connection goes from, inspiration to a direct pipeline.
You got Jamie Lee Curtis.
They got Jamie Lee Curtis fresh off her role as Laurie Strode. And that was the linchpin. Lynch admitted later he literally couldn't get financing for the movie until she signed the contract.
Wow.
The banks didn't care about the script. They cared about the star. She was the seal of approval.
And get this, she was paid $30,000, which sounds low, but Curtis later said this was the first project where she actually made money.
It was a crucial step for her. It cemented her as the Scream Queen. But we can't talk about the cast without mentioning the man playing her father, Mr. Hammond.
Oh my gosh.
The one and only Leslie Nielsen.
This blew my mind. When I think Leslie Nielsen, I think The Naked Gun, I think Airplane. I'm waiting for him to say, "Don't call me Shirley." But here he is, just dead serious.
He is, and you have to remember, this is 1980. This is just on the cusp of his comedy reinvention. At the time, he was cast because he was one of Canada's most experienced dramatic actors.
So he's playing a grieving father and a school principal, and he's playing it completely straight.
Completely. And it creates such a weird tension for a modern viewer.
Right.
You're on edge, not just because of the killer, but because your brain is expecting him to do a pratfall. Now, you mentioned earlier this was a tax shelter film. We should probably pause and explain what that actually means, because it dictates the entire look and feel of the movie.
Yeah, I see that term tax shelter cinema thrown around a lot for Canadian films from this era. What does it actually mean for us, the viewers?
So in the late 70s, early 80s, the Canadian government created this thing called a capital cost allowance. Basically, to jumpstart their film industry, they let investors write off 100% of their investment in a Canadian film against their taxes.
So you had, like, dentists and doctors just dumping money into movies to lower their tax bill.
Precisely. They didn't necessarily care if the movie was a masterpiece. They just needed it to get made.
Yeah.
But there was a catch. To sell these movies internationally, especially to the U.S. market, they had to look American.
Which explains why Prom Night, filmed in Toronto at the Don Mills Collegiate Institute, is trying so hard to hide that it's in Canada.
Right. You have American stars like Jamie Lee Curtis imported in. You have locations dressed to look like Anytown, USA. It created this weird, like, uncanny valley version of America that is unique to these films.
Okay, so you have this low-budget, tax shelter movie trying to act American. And that brings us to the pacing. Because if you read the reviews, there's one complaint that comes up over and over again.
That it's boring.
Yes. That it's a slow burn or just plain slow.
Well, let's look at the structure. Unlike a lot of slashers that start the body count pretty early, Prom Night spends the first 2/3 of its runtime just hanging out.
It's like a slice-of-life drama. We see them choosing dresses, high school politics, losing their virginity. It feels surprisingly grounded for a slasher.
And that's intentional. Lynch was trying to create a realistic portrayal of 1980 high school life. Although, we should note, in classic 80s fashion, the casting works against this.
Oh, absolutely. These high schoolers look like they have mortgages and 401ks. They look 30 years old.
It's a trope of the time, for sure. But this hanging out vibe leads to the elephant in the room. The disco.
The disco debacle. This is my favorite behind-the-scenes story. We cannot gloss over this.
I certainly can't.
So the movie has these huge dance sequences. It's practically a musical for like 20 minutes. And originally they wanted to use real hits, right? Donna Summer, Gloria Gaynor.
Correct. But remember that $1.5 million budget. They couldn't afford the rights to those songs. Not even close.
So what do? They've already filmed all the dancing.
The producer goes to the composer, Paul Zaza, and he gives him this impossible task. He says, I need you to write original disco songs that sound exactly like the hits, and I need them in 5 days.
5 days to write and record a whole disco soundtrack.
And he did it. He wrote songs that were essentially sound-alikes. He mimicked the beat, the tempo, and honestly, he did his job a little too well.
Uh-oh.
This resulted in a $10 million copyright lawsuit.
What?
The copyright holders for the original songs argued that Zaza's tracks were way too close to the real thing.
$10 million. That's almost 10 times the budget of the movie.
It was an existential threat. Fortunately for them, they settled for $50,000.
Yeah.
But if you watch the movie, just listen to the music. It sounds familiar, but just legally distinct enough to exist.
And the sheer volume of it. You get a scene with a threatening phone call, and then boom, 3 minutes of intense choreographed disco pointing.
It's jarring. But I'd argue that contrast creates a very specific atmosphere. It captures that transition period perfectly. The death of disco and the birth of the 80s slasher happening at the same time.
Okay, so let's unpack the actual horror. Because beneath the glitter balls, there is a pretty dark mystery here. And the structure borrows from something called giallo.
Yes, this is key to understanding the film.
Okay, for listeners who might not know, break down giallo for us.
So giallo is Italian for yellow. It refers to a series of cheap paperback mystery novels in Italy that had yellow covers. In the 60s and 70s, this evolved into a film genre think directors like Dario Argento.
So it's a whodunit with a knife.
Exactly. The hallmarks are a black-gloved killer, a shiny weapon, heavy, raspy breathing, and a plot focused on uncovering the murderer's identity. It's all about a past trauma.
And Prom Night leans hard into this. The killer has the black gloves, the breathing, and we have a red herring that screams classic mystery.
Right. The film sets up this very grim backstory in the prologue. It's 1974. We see a group of kids playing hide-and-seek in an abandoned convent.
And this scene is genuinely creepy. They're teasing this younger girl, Robin Hammond. They're chanting, "Kill, kill," at her.
And in her fear, Robin backs up and falls out of a second-story window. It's a tragic accident, but the kids make a pact of silence. They never tell anyone.
And the police blame a local sex offender, Leonard Murch, for the death.
So for the first hour of the movie, the film is telling us that Leonard Murch has escaped from the psychiatric facility. The audience and the police are looking left, thinking it's the escaped maniac.
While the real killer is already inside the school, stalking the teenagers who were responsible for Robin's death 6 years earlier.
It's classic misdirection. It keeps the police occupied outside, while the real drama happens on the dance floor.
So let's talk about the kills. Because for a movie that takes an hour to get going, when it starts, it really starts.
The shift is so abrupt. Once the prom begins, the film sheds that high school drama skin and just goes full slasher.
We start with Kelly in the dressing room, throat slit with a shard of mirror.
A bit of poetic justice, maybe.
Yeah.
She's staring at her own vanity, and the mirror becomes the weapon.
But then we get Jude and Slick. Oh man, Slick. This character is hilarious. He's the goofy stoner guy with the customized van.
He is very much the comedic relief.
But his death, it feels like it belongs in an action movie. He drives the van off a cliff and it just explodes into a massive fireball.
It is incredibly dramatic.
Yeah.
Most slashers give you a quiet stab in the dark. Prom Night gives you a vehicular explosion. It's ridiculous, but it wakes you up.
And then Wendy, the mean girl, she gets a long chase scene through the school, which ends with an axe.
4 hacks, to be precise. It's a brutal end for the ringleader.
But we have to talk about the most famous moment in the movie. The head roll.
Yes. Lou Farmer.
He's up on the catwalk above the stage, and the killer just takes his head off.
Visually, this was a huge deal for a low-budget film. I looked into how they did this. The effects team built a false floor on the catwalk. The actor stuck his real head down through a hole, and they placed a prosthetic dummy head next to his shoulders to be chopped off.
That's amazing. And then the head rolls off the catwalk and lands right in the middle of the dance floor.
Stops the party dead. It's the moment the fantasy of the prom is shattered by the horror. It's iconic.
And that leads to the unmasking. Kim, Jamie Lee Curtis's character, fikes the killer. She hits him with the axe. And when the mask comes off...
It's her brother, Alex Hammond.
The twist.
Now, a lot of sources will tell you this is a predictable twist. Some say even Scooby-Doo writers would reject it because there are so few male characters.
Yeah, if you're paying attention, process of elimination gets you there pretty fast.
But I'd argue that focusing on the surprise misses the point. Thematically, it works. Alex witnessed Robin's death. He knew who was responsible. His motive isn't just madness, it's pure grief-stricken revenge.
And the ending isn't a victory lap. That's what struck me. He dies in his sister's arms crying they killed her. It's actually really tragic.
It is. It's not the triumphant evil is defeated ending you get in something like Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
It's a family destroyed by grief. It adds a somber note that elevates it a bit.
So we have a movie with a predictable twist, a ton of disco, and a slow start. But here is where it gets interesting. The money. Did this weird mix actually work?
It was a juggernaut. It cost $1.5 million to make. It grossed nearly $15 million in the U.S. alone.
That is a massive return on investment.
It was Canada's highest-earning horror film of 1980. It proved the slasher craze wasn't just a fluke.
But the critics, they were not invited to the party.
Oh, they hated it. Gene Siskel was particularly harsh. He called it a watered-down cross between Carrie and Halloween. And, fair enough, it does borrow shamelessly. You have the prom setting from Carrie, the escaped maniac plot from Halloween. Critics felt it was derivative.
But audiences didn't care. And over the years, it's built this huge cult following.
It has. People love it for the nostalgia. They love it for that weird soundtrack, which, by the way, had a rare Japanese release that collectors go crazy for.
And they love the so bad it's good dance.
Exactly. It's a time capsule.
Speaking of things I learned that blew my mind, I found a piece of trivia I have to share.
Lay it on me.
Okay, so the actress who plays Wendy, the mean girl, her name is Anne-Marie Martin.
Right.
She didn't just stay in front of the camera. Years later, she co-wrote the movie Twister.
The tornado movie. With the flying cow.
The blockbuster tornado movie. She wrote it with her husband at the time, Michael Crichton. The girl getting chased by an axe in Prom Night helped create one of the biggest disaster movies of the 90s.
That is a fantastic connection. Wow. It just goes to show you how small the industry can be.
And one other quick fact. If you want to visit Alexander Hamilton High School, you just need to go to the Don Mills Collegiate Institute in Toronto. It's still there.
I love that. Hopefully with less decapitation these days.
So bringing it all together, Prom Night, it's flawed, it's disco heavy, but it feels essential.
I think so. It represents a specific moment in time. It bridges that gap between the rise of the slasher and the death of disco. And it survives on the sheer charisma of Jamie Lee Curtis and the campiness of those dance sequences.
And maybe that first hour, the part where they're just teens hanging out, maybe that's the point.
Well, that brings up a provocative thought. In modern horror, we're so used to the jump scare happening in minute 5. We rush to the kills to keep people off their phones.
Right, engagement is everything.
But Prom Night spends an hour just letting these teens be teens. Boring, maybe. But does that boredom actually make us care more about them when the axe finally swings? Do we feel the loss more because we watch them buy dresses and deal with awkward dates? Or is it just filler?
That is a great question. Is the slow burn a feature or a bug? I'll let you all decide that one.
It's definitely something to chew on next time you're watching a modern slasher that cuts straight to the blood.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive into the glittery, bloody world of Prom Night. Thanks so much for listening.
And a big thank you again to the Dark Zero Horror Network. Stay safe out there.
See you next time.